and welcome to La Rosa Reads. I'm Denise La Rosa, and today I am thrilled to share with all of you my wrap-up for the 7 classics I read by Black authors. Let's talk books. So happy New Year, everyone. I hope that you have brought in this new year full of joy and hope and inspiration for better days to come. I hope that you and your family, your loved ones are doing well. And I hope you are off to a fantastic start for your reading year. Last year in 2023, I made it a goal to read at least 12 classics by 12 Black authors. I did not expect to receive so much positive feedback on that video. It's probably one of, if not my most successful video here on La Rosa Reads. So thank you for being invested in that journey of reading classics by Black authors. I know that it was a transformative experience for me, and I am here to share with you the 7 books that I read by Black authors that are considered classics. You heard that number right. It's 7, not 12. But I think reading more than half of my goal is considered a success. So I know that I'm definitely going to continue reading classics by Black authors. And I just am so thrilled to share with you my thoughts on the 7 that I read last year. Fences by August Wilson is a play set in the late 1950s in Pittsburgh, in the Hill District to be specific, where August Wilson grew up. And it is a journey of a man who is really at a crossroads in his life. He's from the old school way of thinking among Black folks, and he's also wrestling with this next generation. His son is an example of that generation, really trying to grapple with what it means to be Black in America and standing up for themselves, seeing life anew as we go into the civil rights movement and the civil rights era. I think that this play is just a wonderful example of August Wilson at his best. The Century Cycle is a collection of plays that August Wilson wrote that take a decade in the life of Black America and really sheds light on those lived experiences. And I must say, Fences is one that is so endearing. Of course, I ended up ultimately watching the film starring Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. And I think the film was done to perfection. It definitely lived out the tale, the play. It stayed true to the authentic work of August Wilson. I found this play to be gripping. I found it to be thoroughly entertaining, which is so wild to me because the play essentially takes place in a backyard and inside a home and really nowhere else, but it was just enthralling and so emotional. I think that August Wilson did an excellent job of shedding light on what a working class Black man was grappling with at the time that this play is representing. So it was a great start to my classic reads last year by reading Fences. In February, I found myself reading Kindred by Octavia Butler. I had read Parable of the Sower, and oh my gosh, just thinking about it, I get a little the EBGBs, a little cringy, because Parable of the Sower definitely took me outside of my comfort zone. It's sci-fi at its finest, and Kindred is the original Black sci-fi masterpiece, according to so many people that I know. And my goodness, I was just enthralled by this book. I was blown away. We have a woman who is married to a white man. They move into this home together, and as they are setting up their new home library, the protagonist finds herself fainting and then waking up hundreds of years prior to her present day, which was the 1970s. And where she finds herself is on a plantation and enslaved. There is a young white man that she keeps returning to whenever she's having these episodes of fainting. She's returning to the time of enslavement to help this young white man, this young white boy rather, along his own life journey. And it is so intriguing. It is also a history lesson. It pushes so many boundaries, and I can see why it's considered a classic and a masterpiece. I was just swept away. I could not put the book down. I did end up watching the very short-lived series adaptation of Kindred with my husband. I just thought that it would be the perfect show for both of us to watch, given his interest and my love for the book. I am so thankful that I read Kindred. Next up on my classic reads by Black authors was The Watsons Go to Birmingham. And I just thought this sounded like it would be right up my alley. It's a middle grade novel. I thought it would have a lot of humor in it. And I feel a little about the book. The family was quirky. Not as quirky as I thought they would be, so I was a little disappointed in that. The journey, it took us a while to get to the Watsons heading to Birmingham, so that was a little bit of a downer. There was a lot to lead up to that, and we have this young boy, and the story is told through his POV. He is the youngest in this family, and his mom and dad are just fun-loving. It gives me like the Wonder Years revamped, with the young Black family that we follow in the new Wonder Years version, the reboot. And so, yeah, it's like similar vibes to that. And they traveled to Birmingham. And then I found that we went from this humorous, fun, loose time with a big brother that was making some poor choices. So they sent him to live with family in Birmingham. They live up north. So the move south was going to slow things down for big brother. And then they get to Birmingham and it takes a very serious turn. And given the time period, that shouldn't be surprising, but the pacing of this book, I was just like, what? Like, how did we get here? We were fun. We were having a good time. It was humorous. It was kind of an escape from, all that the 1960s brought as far as race relations go in the civil rights movement. And then it was heavy hitting when we think about the church bombing that took place in Birmingham. There's a connection to that within the story. It was an interesting time. Not arguably, hands down, my least favorite classic that I read for this challenge. It's definitely one that I was a little surprised that it's had such staying power. But nonetheless, I'm happy that I read it. Then we had our legendary woman of the hour, Ann Petrie, with The Street. The Street is the first novel to sell over 1 million copies, written by a Black woman. I just do not understand. You're going to hear me say this a lot. I don't understand why Ann Petrie is not like one of the first authors that we hear about when we're thinking about legendary authors, authors to be celebrated, authors to learn about and learn from. But whatevs. I'm here to tell you, this novel, I can totally see why it sold over 1 million copies. It is absolutely a sweeping tale about a young Black woman who ends up being married and has this son and just finds herself constantly striving towards financial freedom, always striving to have more, to do right by, to do better by her son, to give him the life that she feels like he deserves and that she deserves. So this journey takes her from finding employment away from her home in Harlem. She ends up working for a wealthy white family in Connecticut. Seeing this wealthy white family just was the beginning of her obsession with money and wealth and status. Being away from her son and her husband was not good for her marriage. She ultimately ends up being divorced and finds herself living with her father and his many girlfriends. And she's thinking to herself, this is not the life that I want my son to live. We need to strike out on our own, find our own place. And of course, being a Black woman, she had a very difficult time finding a decent place to live and had to settle for this place that was really a slum. And we have this creepy Creeperton dude that was the super of this building, and he's stalking her. He's like trying to assault her. Then we have this wild older woman who's in cahoots with some local Italian mobster, and she's trying to look out for her, but she's got her own stuff going on that's a little shady. Then we have the protagonist trying to become a famous singer, thinking maybe that's the way I'll earn wealth and, live this fantastic life that I want for my son and myself. Her desire to gain status and wealth really backfires on her, and she ends up doing exactly what she was trying not to do, and that is abandoning her son, neglecting him, which has severe, and I mean severe consequences. Arguably one of my favorite books of all time, The Street was a classic that I will always remember. And I went from that win to another win with If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. Y'all. Now, I read The Fire this time by James Baldwin a couple years ago. I believe it was in 2020. That was my first dabble into James Baldwin's work. Of course, that was like a memoir. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Understand why it is a classic, but this one is a love story like no other that I have ever read before. It's so tender, so poignant. We have a young Black boy, a young Black girl who grew up together in the same neighborhood, and the young woman becomes a budding young woman. The little boy becomes a fine young man, and these besties all of a sudden, in one moment, look at each other and they see each other differently, and they fall madly in love. And it's this young love that is so innocent, yet sensual and deep, and really like going into territory unknown, but you're with a friend, more than a lover, but this is a friend, someone that you know deeply. And it is so romantic and so profound. And then unfortunately, the young man is wrongfully accused of a crime and is thrown behind bars. Now, this sends his lover into a downward spiral. She is with child, she is young, and her family loves this young man because they've known him since he was a little boy. And so everyone is trying, well, I should say, everyone on her side of the family is trying to get him out of jail. And that just sends the story into so many directions that just enrich the core love story, that really makes that love richer and more profound as you turn each page. The film adaptation was sheer perfection. I mean, usually you say the book is better than the movie. I say this movie lived up to the book's standards. So I fell in love with If Beale Street Could Talk. I am so thankful that I read this classic by James Baldwin. Remember how I said The Watsons Go to Birmingham was like my least favorite classic? I digress. Let me back it up. It is my next to least favorite. My least favorite was by my girl, the author of Passing, which received 5 glowing stars from yours truly. It is Quicksand, Nella Larsen's first book. A semi-autobiographical novel about a woman who is biracial and is really struggling with her identity, discovering who she is. Yes, race plays a role in that. She feels like a part of her is left unknown to her. She doesn't really know one side of herself, but yet she doesn't know the other side that well either. So she doesn't feel like she fits in anywhere in America, and she's very unsettled. She's very, I feel like she's just constantly searching for an answer to her sadness. And so that leads her to doing different jobs, moving to different locations, even overseas with some of her white relatives for a short period of time. And every time she arrives somewhere, begins a new life, she's like, okay, I think this is it. I have found happiness. And she really is her own worst enemy. She finds a way every time to just destroy the life she has built in this location and ends up having to leave and go somewhere else to find her happiness. That sounds like it could be deep. It sounds like it could be quite the novel. But the writing was such a drag. It read like it was someone's debut novel. And, grace for the journey. Thank God she kept trying because she gave us Passing, which is stellar. But this one was a disappointment. However, I feel good knowing that I have read Nella Larsen's first novel and therefore can't be too unhappy with that one. And last, but certainly not least, we have the 7th and final classic by a Black author that I read in 2023, and it is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. What a time to be reading The Color Purple. I mean, Lady O, aka Lady O, also known as Oprah, has made it known that The Color Purple is having a new day, right? It is now a musical film adaptation kind of thing that is taking the world by storm. But I read the original by Alice Walker for the first time, and I cannot get this novel out of my head. It is living rent-free up here. And I think it's why I didn't read any more classics after that. Like, I literally read this in August and have been sitting with it ever since. We have two sisters. These two sisters end up being separated by life circumstances, but we know that love knows no physical bounds, right? These sisters are forever connected, no matter how close or how far they are. They're connected through unconditional love and unimaginable trauma. And we are with the one sister, Celie, for most of the novel, and she is enduring some more trauma with this marriage that she's in, but yet she discovers found family. Even though she's away from her sister, her closest living blood relative, she has a found family that she has connected with that has helped her connect with herself on a deeper level. And I find it to be one of those stories that is understandably a classic and one that is a universal tale. Yes, their identifiers being Black Americans help us understand the story in a different way, but all of us across differences can understand what it means to find people who really care about you and embrace you and accept you for who you are. And we also can understand what it means to discover new things about yourself. So I love me some Color Purple, and I legit love it because it's my favorite color. A love situation. So there you have it, my friends. You asked for the wrap up. I hope that I delivered for you. Are you interested in any of these books? Have you read any of them? Please let me know in the comments below. Also, I highly encourage you to read classics by Black authors. I found myself just falling in love with reading again, falling in love with myself again as a Black woman, being proud of my culture, proud of the accomplishments of these authors, and I am so grateful that I made this a goal. It not only has made me a better reader, but it's made me a better person as well. So, until next time, happy reading. Bye!